Welcome to another episode of the STR Sisterhood. I'm your host, Stacey St. John, and I have to tell you, today is a very special day because we have made it to 100 episodes. And I cannot believe it, first of all. And second of all, I just want to say thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Whether you've listened to one episode or all 100, I wanted to take a moment to express my sincere thanks to you for your wonderful support. I absolutely wouldn't be here without you. Now, also over the course of these episodes, you'll probably have heard me give a shout out to all of the amazing women inside the Female Short-Term Rental Investors Facebook group, a community of more than 60,000 women where we eat, sleep, breathe, and talk about short-term rentals each and every day. Thank you to every member of that Facebook community who lends a helping hand and their voice to help other women from all around the world be the best real estate investors and the best short-term rental hosts that we can be. Now, today is a unique episode. Normally, I am joined by another person live and we are conducting an interview. But today, since I feel so lucky, we are going to be diving into a lucky 7. So the top 7 episodes that we have recorded over the last few years. And we will be sharing highlights from each episode. I can't wait to see you on the other side. And let's go ahead and dive in to our first highlight. Now, one of the most popular episodes was actually the very first one that we released. And I sat down with Amy Corbett. We talked about going from employee to entrepreneur. And Amy's story is absolutely beautiful. If you have not actually listened to that episode in its entirety, I would encourage you to do so. But in this highlight, Amy walks through the journey of what it's like to work alongside her husband in her short-term rental business. So let's go ahead and dive into this highlight with Amy. I want to pivot really quickly and ask about operating a business with your spouse. Because I know so many women who are listening may be going, wow, she is brave for stepping out, starting a business without any prior business experience, and even more brave by running a business with her spouse. So talk to us a little bit about what that's been like and maybe some struggles along the way and how you have overcome them.
Yeah, well, so for us, we were in ministry. Of course, my husband was was employed, but I kind of worked part-time as a musician along the way and wanted to be really involved. So we had already had 17 years under our belt of ministry in that sense. I feel like we're a pretty good team, but sure, going into a for-profit business is a whole different ball game. So we really quickly we knew each other's strengths. And so I'm really passionate about putting aces in their places. So, where Mark can shine is not where I shine. Thankfully, we are, have different giftings. And he's got the gift of understanding finances and numbers, and that's not my area of expertise. So we've kind of worked it out where I almost feel like we're a little bit now like ships in the night, where we are just passing. He's doing his things. I'm doing my things. I've got the team doing our things. As far as just struggles, yeah, I think it's hard to run a business, to be, my kids will be like, you guys are always together. Like, you don't need to spend time together, but they don't understand that running a business, we're just talking so much business, and we've got to prioritize at night, like actually being like, well, how are you actually doing? How's your heart? What's going on? What are you dreaming about these days? What are you, just keeping our connection, while we're doing so many things.
And so do you try to set dedicated time to step away from the business talk and get into family life? Or how do you make that transition on a daily basis?
It's tough. Like today, we haven't had much time this week. And so we've decided we're going to go to lunch. And probably at lunch, we're going to need to say, okay, no talking business. It's always going to bleed into it because like our life is, you eat, sleep, and breathe what you're doing, and family gets folded into it. But, at the end of each day, once the kids are down, we would love to just turn on the TV and veg. But we're making a conscious effort to stop before that moment, to put the phones down and to really say, to kind of practice that conversation together.
I love that. Isn't she awesome? She's incredible. Now, the next highlight I want to share with you was with one of my most favorite people on the planet, Tanya Rooney. And we talk in this highlight about problem solving, how to deal with stress, and you might hear some bonus chat about remotes and spoons as well. So let's go ahead and dive into that highlight.
Real estate is not for the faint of heart. You will always have something that comes up and you just have to work through it. Like, I think that's the part about real estate that I like the most is you have to learn how to pivot, and creative problem solving is totally my jam. Like, I hear a problem and I think of 5 solutions immediately, but that was my job for 10 years. So now it's like, it lends a pretty good hand to real estate because it's every day.
And again, I think that's such a really good point because I always talk with folks inside, my Achievers Club, inside my accelerator program, that you, as the CEO of your business, guess what you are? You are the chief problem solver. Mm-hmm. And if you go into business thinking that you're not going to encounter any hiccups, you are going to find yourself in a world of hurt. Right? That's another direction.
That's a bummer.
I'm curious, knowing that, creative problem solving is your jam. Talk to us a little bit what that looks like for you. Meaning, let's say you're thrown a problem. Number one, knowing that it is your jam, do you get stressed out about a problem? Or if you do get stressed out, how do you deal with that stress?
Yeah, I still have some stress, especially if I'm far away. If like I'm in a different state and there's a problem, I'm like, crud. Now I totally, like, I'm in charge. You're right. Like, we're the chief of everything. Like, the guests, it's not their problem. It's not your cleaner's problem. It's your problem. Thankfully, I have really good partners, so that helps. But I think when I get thrown into a problem, I am generally quite calm, especially when it comes up. Like, if a guest says, hey, there's water coming out of your light, I'm like, crud. That I can totally pivot from. It does, like, it makes me a little anxious, and it's just because, like, most of the time it's about the guests. I'm like, oh God, I hope, they're not super upset. Thankfully, we've somehow had really great guests. We've had some weird problems at our properties, and somehow we still get good reviews, even when there's a weird problem. So I think, pivoting from that is really important. And then I have a really good husband who, when I get really, really like jazzed about something because, I'm upset, he's pretty good at like walking me back and being like, okay, like this is stuff you do all the time. Like, he doesn't even hear some of the problems because there's not so many, but there are, because like, it's all our problem. Like, if a cleaner doesn't show up, like that's our problem. If a bed is broken and you need to try to get that bed replaced before the next guest comes in. Like, there's all kinds of things that we have to do constantly. And I think the calmer you stay, the easier it is. And knowing that it's inevitable. Like, I think the first 6 months of hosting is honestly the worst. It's the worst and the best because you're going to learn the most. But man, you get drugged through the mud. And I'm an emotional person, not a logical person. Like, on the scale of things, I know there's a scale of 10 and I'm probably a 7 because I am really emotional. Like, I I feel all the things when stuff happens. But I try to put logical hat on, and in the first months of hosting, all of that gets tested. And this is my experience. It doesn't mean it's everybody's, but I think a lot of people do have a lot of that experience in the front end, because the first time something breaks, or the first time somebody trashes something or ruins something and is rude about it, or they even tell you, you still feel like, I just put all this work into this thing and now I have to fix it. And you feel a little bit of a gut punch. But I feel like after the first 6 to 9 months, maybe even 12 months, you can kind of start settling down. And as you add properties, and at that point, you start realizing, well, this is a business. This stuff is going to happen. Move on. Stop looking at your cameras. Stop doing these kinds of things. And you just, when it happens, your cleaners tell you, and then you just figure it out when it, you just replace the thing. And, we just have more stock of there's more Roku remotes and there's more lamps and there's more things that if I can't get it same day or next day, you just figure it out. So I think the stress starts to dissipate as you go through more and more, because you're just like, wow, that's nothing compared to, again, that day that wall fell down. I'm just like, holy crud. That's literally a portion of my house. There's very few things that top that kind of, comment. But plenty of other hosts do have things that top it, because it's just, host stories are ridiculous.
This is true. Now, isn't it amazing how, first of all, if I would have known the quantity of remotes I was going to have to purchase, I would have totally invested in some remote, company, because they walk off in spoons. Do you ever have your spoons walk off? It's like, where did these spoons go? They go with socks in my dryer. Spoons and socks and remotes. It's a thing.
Yeah, actually, the spoons thing it's totally a thing. You're just like, and it makes me think about my own life that, when all of a sudden we're getting low on spoons, I'm like, Matt, where are all the spoons? And he's like, oh, they're in my backpack. And I'm like, is that what guests are doing? They're just bringing the spoons because, and that's one of the reasons now I use cheaper silverware specifically. I know that it's not as pretty, but I'm like, but Sam's Club, you can get a 25 or 30 pack of spoons for $5. And they walk off. So it's some of these things you want them to be really nice, but you're like, well, do they need heavy spoons? Whatever.
Maybe if they were heavy, they would remember they're in their backpack. Nope, I don't.
They still take them. Don't worry. They're going to take them regardless. And if you get the cute ones, oh man, get a black one or a gold one. No. Now all of a sudden you have 2. And you know what? You have to buy a whole new set to get the other 4 that you needed or the 6 that you needed. So I've just given up on silverware.
Silverware and remotes. That could be another podcast episode. Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, my friends, in this next highlight, we are sitting down with the CEO of The Mortgage Shop, the one and only Brena Carl. And if you don't know Brena, you are missing out. Not only is she an expert in short-term rental mortgages, she is an all-around fabulous person. And in this highlight, she is walking us through the various loan products that are available to short-term rental investors. So let's go ahead and dive into this snippet with Brena. Can you walk us through what different loan types there are and how someone might choose one type versus another?
Yeah. So the first one and the most popular, most heard of is probably that second home, or what's known as a vacation home loan. It's the lowest down payment option to get into investment right away. Your primary intent has to be to vacation there first, and then you can rent it out according to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You do have to stay there 2 weeks out of the year, and then you're able to rent it out the remaining part of the year. So there's that option. If you're just getting into it, I'd recommend that one because it gives you a little bit of taste of what it's going to be like. You get to know the area well. And I always tell my clients, when you're looking at an area, go vacation or visit there. Because that way, if you're putting it on Airbnb, you can recommend your favorite restaurants. You can recommend your favorite parks. And you're just more personable with these guests as opposed to auto sending out messages and be done with it. So I think that's a really good one for starters because, you may decide you don't like this and you're stuck with just an investment only property instead of a vacation home that your family can use. So that's the first option. Then we have investment only. for conforming loans or conventional loans and jumbo loans. And that does go off of your personal debt and personal income, but you are able to use proposed rental income on the subject property to help qualify for that loan. So if you already have a second home, let's say you've already been past that, you're experienced, you want to get into investment more, you get an investment property, you are able to still vacation at your investment property. I mean, it's your property, you can do what you want with it, but it's, your primary intent is to invest there. You cannot use proposed rental income on a second home loan. You can on an investment loan. So keep that in mind. Then the most popular out there right now for investment loans is the DSCR loan, or what's known as debt service coverage ratio. That one does not go off of your personal debt or personal income. It goes off the property you are purchasing's proposed monthly rental income and the proposed monthly mortgage payment. Most DSCR loans require you to have a 1-to-1 ratio, which means if your mortgage is $3,000 a month, then your net rental income proposed should be $3,000 a month or more, which is not hard to achieve in these tourist markets that we're in. That one is good if you, in the beginning, if you're just getting properties, I recommend going towards that conventional route because they're going to have better terms and better interest rates. So I hear a lot of people like, I've got to get a DSCR loan. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, I heard that's the best. And I'm like, it is if you're farther along in the game. It also doesn't go against your debt to income ratio or look at it. So it's also an option if you've capped yourself that year for debt to income ratio wise, you can get a DSCR loan and be able to continue to build your portfolio. So that's the difference between DSCR and investment only that goes off of conventional guidelines. And you can also close the DSCR in an LLC if you wanted to. You can't do that with conventional. So I know a lot of my clients for anonymity, they want to not show their name on stuff. And so they can close that in an LLC.
Now, how's that for a recap on loan products, right? All right. This next snippet is again with someone who is near and dear to my heart, the one and only Paige Hayes. And Paige walks us through discovering the story of a property. And I think Paige has done such a beautiful job in her business, not only bringing stories to life for other owners that she is designing for, but for teaching people how to make a property stand out through the power of a story. So let's go ahead and dive in. And talking about story of the property, I know that that is something that you are really passionate about. Can you walk us through, what a story of a property really is? Let's start there because I'm sure that it's a concept that maybe folks haven't heard of before.
Yeah, absolutely. So the story is the first place that I start, of course, because I love stories. But it's kind of like it's the term that I use for the broader concept of, first of all, determining who your guest avatar is, why they are going to be coming to the area, more importantly, why they might come to stay with you over other people. How long are they going to be staying? Where are they going to be coming from? What are their demographics? And then you are going to work through your design with that foundation and kind of design your property for those guests and what they're looking for, how it's going to stand out to them. And then you sort of incorporate that into your specific property as well. So obviously, if you have a ranch, I'm sitting in our property right now, which is a ranch house in Northwest Colorado. And we call it the Outpost. It's the Outpost is the name. And the reason our story here is, so I love old fort design, and it's like they have these old fort museums around here in Colorado. And I've always been so drawn to them. And you go in and you see, they have them kind of reconstructed as how they would have looked back then. And it's so cool because they have just this amazing combination of, antiques and stuff that people really nice things that people brought from back east, on their wagons, as well as mixed in, Aztec blankets and like big bear rugs and just like these rustic like lanterns. And it's just a really, really neat mix. But the forts used to be somewhere that people would stop on their way to somewhere else, or it was like somewhere that they could stay and have just like some comfort and some peace from their really long journey while they're on their way to somewhere else. And so that's what I really wanted. That's what I came to for our story here. Is this is kind of a transitional area as well. We're in Northwest Colorado. We're a secondary market to Steamboat. So we're in Craig. And a lot of times we do just get people who are kind of passing through. And we really wanted to make it a place where they could feel comfortable and at home for whatever brief time they're here and kind of like rest and recharge on their way to wherever it is that they're going. So that's kind of our story here and maybe kind of gives a little bit of an example of how it all kind of incorporates. So I put our story together before I started the design. So I had it all in mind the whole time as I was picking things out, as I was doing the layouts, as I was planning what we were going to put in, as we were planning our upgrades, which are also amenities. I just having that starting point and like answering those questions ahead of time helps you build this really amazing experience, and it helps you choose all those details that are then going to just make your property just stand out. In the end, like you don't have to try to make it stand out then, because it will do it on its own.
Yeah. And I'm so intrigued by this because I would imagine that for someone like you who is creative, who is passionate about stories, it might be, and correct me if I'm wrong, it might be easy for you to walk into a property and maybe be drawn almost immediately to what that property story might be. For those of us regular people in the world, I would imagine someone might be listening and going, okay, that's all great, Paige, but how do I do that? I'm not a creative person. What would your recommendations be? Like, how would someone go about creating a story, even if it's from thin air?
Yes. So it can be really hard sometimes. Especially if you're in like a suburb or somewhere where the property doesn't have like an already evident story, or even if you don't know where to start. That's part of what I forgot to mention, that like, yes, in addition to doing design, I also now teach it to other people. So that's, I've become very familiar with like that exact thing of how other people can work through that step by step. And it starts with kind of answering a series of questions, which like we, talked about a little bit already. Who are you targeting as your guests? Like that is like first and foremost going to determine your property's story. Even if there's nothing built in, nothing around it, like who do you want to be coming to stay with you? And so once you answer that, then you just can kind of build off. And the other things to take into consideration are, of course, your location and, what kind of, if there are state parks around, or if there are attractions, what are people coming for? If it's a seasonal locality, why people are coming to stay with you. And then from there, that's when you work it into your own specific property and what's going to jump out to those guests. And if there is, again, nothing there, that's when you start to work on, well, what could be there to appeal to them. And so it's really just like a series of small steps that then will get you to that final having your story.
And once you have that story in place or an idea of what that could be, I'm curious if you could share like some examples, even from your own home that you're sitting in, that has the story of the forts, right? What types of things then go into the little details to make that story come to life?
So the method that I use and that I teach, the design method, I guess I call it the SUF method. And it's story, it says the beginning, and then style, then upgrades, and then function, and then fit. So it's just like working through these steps, and then at the end you get there. And so once you have your story, then that's when you start looking at the style. So we talk about like going and finding all of your concepts and going on Pinterest and just putting together everything that jumps out to you in terms of that story or that you think fits that story. And I think actually I was listening to the episode with Tatiana Taylor-Tate, and she mentioned this too, like putting all the stuff together onto the Pinterest boards. And then once you have it, it's amazing how you can see the theme through there. And so like you get your big picture, and then you also can pick and choose some little details, and you say, oh, like this would be a really nice feature to have here. Or like, I'm going to kind of look for this here and not copy. I never, ever, ever want people to copy other properties, because that it keeps you from standing out. It's one thing to say like, okay, this is like, they're doing something right, you know? And so like, let's look at what they're doing right and think about how we can work something like that into our property or make ours even better. But when you are just like cookie cuttering everything, that's when, even if you're copying a standout property, then it's not standing out. Anyway, sorry, that was a tangent.
It's important though, because I often think, I'm totally going to go squirrel here for a second, but I often see pictures of properties and I am thinking, what course is out there that is teaching people to buy these plastic chairs with the four legs that are going out, you know, in 45-degree angles? And it's like, am I missing it somewhere? First of all, right. I want to know who's teaching that. And number two, it's does anyone realize that when you are just copying and pasting design, you are backing yourself into a corner that you don't want to be in because you look like everyone else, right?
Exactly. And even, I mean, it's a weird thing that's happening right now too, because even if you're copying somebody's very bold and in your face design, which is, you know, now everybody's popping the colors and the accent walls, and like, that's cool. That's great. But it may not be the right thing for your property. And when you do it and then everybody has the same thing still, then there's nothing different, and it's not going to stand out when everybody is doing the same thing. So it's, in my opinion, just about like following that process of determining who your guests are and what is going to stand out to them. And then like just tailoring your design to that across the board, and the details, again, like considering your guests, and considering your location and the little things. So there are so many details. Like, I know it's a lot. Like when you start thinking about, okay, well, if a little detail is like what kind of coffee maker I have, and a little detail is like what kind of bookends, or if I have books, or what kind of books they are, and then the drapes, and then the chairs. And like, there are so many details to think about. But building those concepts first and having like a very general and overarching style, that direction that you're going to go towards, then makes it really a lot easier to kind of pinpoint the little details that you want to add.
Right. So cool. Now, with so many of us owners and hosts looking to drive direct bookings for our short-term rentals, it's no surprise that 3 of the most popular episodes are all about branding and marketing. And in this first highlight on the topic that I want to share with you, it is with the one and only Rebecca Lombardo, where she is talking with us about the power of a brand and how to bring it to life for your business. So let's go ahead and dive in. I want to talk with you specifically about brand building, because I know that this is something that's in your blood. It's something that you're passionate about. But I think a lot of individual short-term rental owners who maybe just have, 1, 2, 3 properties may not necessarily think about building a brand behind their short-term rental business. From your perspective, why is brand so important to have in place as a short-term rental owner or operator?
So brand is essentially important in hospitality, because you're putting your personal stamp on that experience. Like, you own, manage, care for these properties, And whatever experience they have in them around them is a reflection of you. And so you want that to be positive and memorable. And the best way to do that is through great branding in addition to execution.
I love that. I totally agree. And I think so many people struggle with that a little bit. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into a conversation about how to actually make that come to life. I also think that a lot of people assume that a brand means having a logo. What say you to a comment like that?
I say your brand is what your guests say it is. So if they say it's nothing more than a logo, ouch. It's not good. But essentially a brand is really four things, right? And there are four things that all good brands have in common. A good brand is relevance. It has a relevant meaning to you in your life. It has value. There's a value attached to that brand. It has very clear messaging and it's very memorable.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dive into each of those a little bit. When you say relevant, again, can you unpack that a little bit? So if someone is thinking, okay, I have to create a brand around my short-term rental business, and I'm making this up. I have a property in Texas and I have a property, on the ski slopes in Vermont. How do I build a brand that's relevant to very different target audiences? Talk to us a little bit about that.
So it's about the consistency of the guest experience, really. So if you're targeting somebody who, let's just say that there's a woman traveling by herself and she's looking for Zen. She wants alone time. She wants peace and quiet. She wants serenity. You can provide that consistently in Vermont or in Georgia. The way that you do that is through all the tactile experiences that she has, but also in your marketing of those locations. So you provide pictures of somebody sitting in a yoga pose or soaps and shampoos that are all very streamlined and minimalist. So the marketing and the branding can manifest in these different ways and yet still provide the same feel to it, if that makes sense. And if you look at any of the marketing that Ritz-Carlton does, whether Ritz-Carlton is in Jamaica or in Vail, it's going to be a Ritz-Carlton experience, right? So it's that kind of consistency and yet unique to each location.
Yeah, I love that. And, it correlates so much with what I teach my students inside my STR Success Accelerator program. And that is your properties are not your business. Okay. Your properties are a product of your business. You have to elevate yourself above the properties. And, as we're talking right now, have a consistent brand around the delivery of the experience, regardless of, to your point, whether you're going after an individual female traveler who's looking for relaxation or a corporate traveler or, a multi-generational family. It's all about the experience that they can expect with you. I love that. And the next marketing expert that I sat down with that I want to share with you is with Jody Bourne. Jody and I chatted about content marketing, what it is and why it's important for you as a short-term rental host or owner, and how to utilize it to drive direct bookings in your business. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll the snippet with Jody. Can you talk with us in general, holistically, what is content marketing and why do you feel like it's important for a short-term rental host?
This is a great question because you're right. Some people think it is just one thing. Some people think it's just a blog. Content marketing, the concept of content marketing is using native content, meaning something that you produced, created yourself, non-advertising, non-PR content. So content to bring people to you, to bring them to listen to you, read your words, see you on video. And that content is supposed to be to build connection, build authority, and build trust. So you're using content across a multitude of platforms to connect people with you, your brand, your business, what you stand for, your values, and all of that.
And for short-term rental hosts who might be listening, that can feel very big and overwhelming, right? So I want to talk with you, throughout our interview about some tactics that people can utilize in their day-to-day. But I'm curious, from your perspective, do you see short-term rental hosts, individual owners leveraging content marketing? And if not, why should they be?
I work with people all the time who have embraced content marketing in various ways. Some of them have one property. Some of them have a small boutique agency, a management agency. I don't work with larger companies, but they actually contract out their marketing strategies, a lot of them, So yes, to answer your question, it is easy to do for one person with one property. I have a host who's in her 60s in Galveston, Texas, with 3 beachfront condos, and she's a blogging queen. I have other hosts who are using social media very well with content marketing. So yes, I have a guy that was in one of my coaching classes that has a fishing cabin in Canada and just does it perfectly. So yes, it is possible. And you're right, it does take some time and some skill and some dedication, but it is definitely the best way to get free traffic to your listing for sure.
I love that. All right, so let's talk about some of those different ways that people can utilize content. Talk to us about your favorite forms of content marketing for short-term rental owners and hosts.
To be honest, I'm a reader. And one thing everybody should think about is you do what your avatar, where they are. Younger people, younger than me, I'm 50, younger people don't read as much. They want video content. So even though I love to read travel blogs, I always have, that might not be the best solution for someone who has a very young female demographic. They just don't have time to read travel blogs anymore. They're looking at Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. So you really have to think about your target market. But I will say, when you can start with a blog or start with a newsletter that's a blog format, then that gives you a lot more content that you can repurpose everywhere. So when you start with video, for example, let's say you start with a reel or a YouTube video, it's really hard then to repurpose that content out from that. You have to still write. You have to still write the words. So when you start with the written, it's easier to parse it down into other forms of content.
That's interesting.
In
your experience. So if you had to choose an order for creating content, you would, correct me if I'm wrong, start with written. If it aligns with your ideal guest avatar, start with written and then repurpose that into video versus the other way around.
It's a really difficult question.
Okay.
Let me restate this. If you are planning to have a very holistic marketing strategy for your business, that you are dedicated to spending some time at doing it the right way, then you should start with a blog, a written blog, and you should then repurpose that content.
Okay. And we have made it to the final highlight. This is highlight number 7, where we are sitting down with Sarah Orchard. Sarah talks with us about the importance of on-site search engine optimization and the powerful results it can drive for your business when it comes to direct bookings. So let's go ahead and dive into this highlight with Sarah. So, Sarah, you mentioned search engine optimization and website. I'm curious, from your perspective, how important is that for someone who is looking to drive direct bookings in their business?
For me, it is the most important tool in that toolkit. And actually, advertising is the one that I go to last. So when I'm writing a marketing strategy for a client, or I'm discussing options with people in my group program, it's always like, for me, it would always be like advertising would be like the last resort. I mean, Facebook ads and Instagram ads can be very effective, but it's like that is your last option. Paid placement, I would always look at using for me, the website is your biggest investment. It's the most valuable. And most businesses should be able to achieve at least 50% organic search traffic from Google without and you don't pay for that. So that's not doing AdWords and PPC. That's just making sure that when people are searching for what you do, that you've got the best opportunity to be visible in front of them, because that is fishing where the fish are. You know, that's the best thing to be doing in terms of your marketing. And yeah, I mean, optimizing the website. And actually, I've done over the last year, I've done 65 website audits, which I do as a paid service. And every single website, without fail, their search engine optimization, on-site search engine optimization was very weak, in that's the bit that doesn't get done by your web developer, because that's not their specialism. And most, short-term holiday let business owners, they don't know how to do it. So it gets missed as an opportunity, and it means that you're missing out on all that free traffic. I mean, we get 65 to 80,000 visits a year to our Treehouse Business website, and 40% of those and more we don't pay for. Their organic search traffic. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So when you say, again, for any listener who might be listening and thinking, okay, that all sounds amazing, but I don't even know what on-site search engine optimization is, how would you describe that?
Okay. For me, it's like signposting all of your pages to Google. So there's this thing called metadata, which sounds really technical, but it's what sits in the back end of your website. There's a couple of fields, one called the page title field and one called the page description, that Google, being a computer algorithm, it can't see your website. It can't digest all the information like a human. Maybe with AI, things will get better, but it needs signposts. So what you do is you have to describe what your business does, but using the search terms, which we refer to as keywords, that your audience are using to search. So an example might be luxury couples treehouse near Wales. If my guests were searching, or they might be looking for a honeymoon spot. So they might be looking for a honeymoon treehouse, England, and that's it. They weren't necessarily, we do get a lot of brand keyword searches, which was when they type in our business name, because we've been on television and they sort of know us potentially. But we get a lot of people who are just searching for inspiration. So they're just going to put generic non-brand keyword terms into the search engine. They're going to put that, honeymoon treehouse for two, rather than Hudnall's hideout. So, we need to make sure we're as visible as possible when those people are searching, and that we come up on that page one list on Google rather than anyone else.
Right. And I'm, wondering too, if people might be thinking, okay, that all sounds great, but how do I actually do that? How do I actually change my meta descriptions and my page titles without getting too far in the weeds? Give us a very high level overview, and I will definitely have you share your contact information at the end of this interview so folks can get a hold of you for additional resources. But from a very high level perspective, how can folks actually update their page titles and meta descriptions?
Well, I had a complete hack for them, which is really good. If you've got a WordPress-based website, there's good news. You can get for free a plugin, which is called Yoast SEO. And you literally install that for free on your website, or you ask your web developer to do it for you, or a technical friend who knows how to do it. And then literally you get a little box with the page title and the meta description, and it shows up on every page of your website or on your blog post as well. And you literally just type in what you want your page title to be and what you want your page description to be. And it does all the rest for you.
Love it.
Super
Love
easy.
that hack. Yes. So Yoast is YOAST, correct?
That's correct.
I've used that as well. Yeah. I love the hacks. I love the hacks. Friends, I am so grateful to have the opportunity to spend a few minutes with each of you each week. From our first episode when we were just getting started to now, we have answered burning questions. We have shared tips to help you grow as a real estate investor as well as a host. We've laughed, we've learned, and most importantly, we've evolved together. If you've been with me from the start or are just tuning in for the first time, I want to say thank you. And I'm going to invite you to send me a note and share your favorite episode, or go ahead and tag me on social media and highlight your favorite part of the STR Sisterhood podcast. With that, I just want to again say thank you for an amazing 100 episodes. I can't wait for the next 100, and I'll see you here next week.